Thank you for staying with us on the AM show. And we start with our very first big story. It has to do with what happened in Apeatse, the explosion. And it's all about rebuilding the community from scratch. It's a conversation on how to get the community back on its feet, how to ensure this disaster doesn't recur, and how to psychologically reorient the people and prepare them for the future. Joining us, Abdullahi Mahama is a building consultant. He's an engineer. Dr. Ruth Owusu-Entwi is Vice President, Ghana Psychiatric Association. But before we hear from them, let's take a look at some of the happenings in there. Maxwell Agbagba actually has been in the fray, and the rider of the motorbike involved in Thursday's explosion at Apeatse in the Western region says, contrary to claims that he collided with the vehicle carrying the explosives, he was at the hospital getting ready to receive treatment when the explosion happened. Let's check out details from this package.
He walks towards personnel of the Criminal Investigations Department who are seated waiting to interrogate him on what he knows about the crash which led to the explosion. The rider limping with his legs and arms bandaged. There are bruises visible on his left hand. He was later taken to the crash site and other details taken. Philip Mensah says, contrary to claims that he collided with a vehicle carrying the explosives, he did not. The tricycle crossed the vehicle in front of me. The driver applied his brakes. I also did the same. Then another vehicle hit me from the back. I fell on the road and my motorbike also kept moving. I did not see the car that hit me from the rear because it was behind me. That was the point people rushed me to the hospital, he said. About 30 minutes later, as the medical team prepared to treat my wounds, we heard the explosion. All the nurses fled the hospital because they said there was fire. Later, they realized the facility wouldn't be affected. So I was not at the scene when the explosion happened. You can ask the nurses and the doctors on duty. I have no idea when the vehicle carrying the explosives crashed into my motorbike because I was rushed to the hospital in a taxi. It was another vehicle, not the vehicle carrying the explosives, he said with tears forming in his eyes.
Explosive car no be share. I no me time a car no be share me motor because me no me talk from na di in be an boys ni free habaya. Mo dem beto taxi ni me call. But what am I say? Aha. The car from the ball, any explosive car.
Philip Mensah says it has to know that his motorbike caused the explosion.
I feel bad, pa. If you say me nimpa, and
I feel very bad. I'm human. We are all humans with different parents. Whether my family members are part of the dead or not, it hurts my soul. There's so much pain in my heart. People have varying accounts of what happened. Some are even saying I collided with a vehicle carrying explosives. Only God knows the true story, because I was not here.
That's all.
Meanwhile, the municipal chief executive of Prestia Huni Valley, Isaac Dasmani, says there are plans to reconstruct the community that was devastated by the explosion.
Today, CEO of also Ghana Gas also came today and then offered a check of our 2 million Ghana cedis to us. We are planning for a MUSEC meeting, hopefully tomorrow, Monday, that we inaugurate a committee of members of our 11 or 12. So that we'll be foreseeing the disbursement of some of the relief items and then how we are going to cater for the displaced in the course of the year. So for now, we are proposing some clergy, some pastors, about 5 people from the community, including 2 females, and then my good self, and then some other security agencies that we feel is appropriate, so that we manage the resources that we are getting, and at the end of the day, to the benefit of the people of Apeatse. Then when it comes to the reconstruction, a lot of companies have come in, and then State Housing has been here, some other agencies have been here, and people go, Ghana Chamber of Mines, they've also offered building materials of $50,000. So all these materials are in here, and then some people, you can see that some people are even bringing some containers that we can keep some of the items in. Yes, and then we have some people who have also started donating some boards, the wood that we can also use for reconstruction and all of that. So the support has been massive. Now we are only waiting for EPA to clear us that the place is appropriate for us to start, rebuilding. So if as soon as they give us the green light, we'll get those out to clear off the site and remove all the debris, and then we'll deposit them somewhere. Then probably we'll start thinking about, we know now the time is going to be properly planned, we may need an extension. So we are thinking about some other areas that very close that we can, extend the building to some of the place. Because of course, when you are building, you can't build like the way they have built their houses. We need to make sure that we do proper planning, and then so that they can have a good facility to stay in.
And that was a piece put together by Maxwell Agbagba, who has been there since this unfortunate incident happened. So we have some, call it new information, where the motor rider or the motorbike rider is saying he was hit from the rear. And then he also, got into the path of the truck carrying the explosives, and that he was not even there in the immediate vicinity when the first explosion took place. So this story will keep developing, and if it were in other jurisdictions, we'd be able to find out, for example, so which vehicle, he is claiming a vehicle hit him, the motorbike rider, which vehicle hit him? What is the number of that vehicle? And the necessary course of action would proceed from there. But let's start our interaction with our guests this morning. Abdullahi Mahama is a building consultant and engineer. We also have Dr. Ruth Owusu-Entwi, President of the Ghana Psychiatric Association. Engineer, Doc, good morning to both of you. Thank you for joining the conversation.
Yeah, good morning.
Can we hear
Thank you very much. Good morning.
Great. Pleasure to have you. Let me start with you, Engineer Abdullahi. You're an engineer. This is technically your forte. So looking at the landscape of Apeatse, what has happened and how the place looks now, what would be your initial assessment? If I were to ask you to give an assessment of what you see, what would you say?
Well, I'll say good morning first and foremost to your viewers. The area is more or less like it has this high altitude and other things, but the explosion that occurred has just changed the formation of the locality. And so, like you rightly said, I heard the MC speaking to issues, and I think almost everything that they said is what they are supposed to do, or that will be my initial, what we call, report from a physical observation or a reconnaissance survey on their side. So you cannot say anything about, apart from what you see there, the existing topography of that land, the fact that there are rocky areas within the neighborhood, and anyway, the formation of the land that we have to now assess prior to any construction being done. So on the engineering side, I'll speak about it when we start going deep into the informations prior to the construction of or reconstruction of the Apeatse community. Right.
But even before we get there, I'd like to, we know that there was quite a package of explosives, but looking at the land area, and again, this is because this is your area of expertise. You're not a mining engineer, but I know that you would be able to assist us. What kind of quantity of ammonium nitrate or these explosives could cause the sort of damage we are seeing? Just give us a fair idea of what it would take to level Apeatse to the ground the way it has been leveled to the ground.
Well, I've been engaged, or I've been involved in some of these blastings. You know, the Ayimensa to Peduase stretch when we were constructing the road in 2004 to 2007, we did a lot of blasting to widen the road because the right-hand side, when you are April bound, was a valley. Same applies what we did in Sawam, the bypass and the Kumasi Highway. That's a Teacher Mante, Isuboy, Amana Sitan, where we have some rock outcrop. So I know what goes into some of these explosives. Even the ones that we use for the construction, I mean, the blasting of those rocks, I would say about 1/10 will be used at a time, unlike what happened. So the quantity of blast that happened at the Apeatse is about maybe 1/10 of what I use or what we use on during the construction or during the what we call the control split blasting on our highways where we have road outcrops. So this is an intense or very huge blasting. And I think because of the buildings that we had there, we should be fortunate. We are lucky that we didn't have a lot of high-rise buildings like what happened in Lebanon, I think last year. Because the vibration, when we're doing the blasting of the rocks and we drill, the expert will come and do what we call the charging, and then they interconnect them with the flexible wires that they use before they charge them. Even with that one, we make sure that the vehicles, which are the last person doing the charges before the blasting, the car is already on, and then just after he connects all the holes that we have charged with the drilled and then inputted the chemicals, explosives in, he moves the car immediately after the last charge with the lighting, and then within the next 15 minutes or 20 minutes, the blasting takes place. And we, on the road, sometimes we are constrained with houses closer, so we would have to go into the communities and tell them to move a minimum of about 400 meters away, because that is even what we expect at the time. So with this truck, I'm sure that it will travel a radius of not less than 700, 800 at the junction. I mean, where the location happened. Any other diameter across it would be, the impact will be felt over a kilometer, and that was magnificent. And so we should be fortunate that we are lucky that we didn't have a lot of high-rise buildings within the neighborhood. Otherwise, it would have been very, very severe.
It could have been more disastrous. Right before I get to Doc, so you spoke about the vibrations. I just want to, lest I forget. Now, how is this going to affect the structural integrity, not just the buildings there, but the land itself? Because, there are other areas where there have been bomb blasts and all of that, and then moving into the future, earthquakes and all of that. With an explosion of this nature, how does this even affect the land area of Apeatse, so that even if we're going to reconstruct the place, I mean, what are some of the things we should look at from an engineering perspective?
Well, thank you. When the environmental people are done with the extent of chemicals within the area, I mean the acceptable limits, I'm sure the doctors will come in and I mean the government has to do a wholesale check on individuals who were within the vicinities and even the outskirts of the town, so they will know the extent of inhalation of this poisonous chemical that can lead to some cancerous cells, whatever it is in the medical field. But we have the basic idea about this. But one of the rules that we're going to do for the construction, like the environmental people come and do the extent and then everything, the planners will come. But before the planners will come, I am proposing, I've not heard it from any of them so far, there will be a seismic test. And a seismic test is like we are trying to do something about earthquake. Vibrations of such magnitude are just similar to earthquakes, how earthquakes happen. So there'll be a seismic test zeroed in at the location, I mean the whole community. That will be able to tell us the extent of fracture of the land and where structures which are supposed to be closer to areas where there was the severity of structure fractures will be what do you call it? Like there will be an advice from the engineering point for the sort of foundation, the type of foundation to be used in the construction of such buildings. So apart from all that they have said, I would propose that there will be a seismic engineer to run a seismic test, so that will give us definite information about how the land was fractured. And that will be an added advantage or information to the structural engineers who will be designing the foundations of such structure. No matter how high we are going, even if it's 1 floor or 2 floors, this information will be very, very good for planning the town, the areas where there will be maybe reservoirs, there will be high-rise buildings, a lot, so that even in the fractures, you'll be able to know the extent of seepage of water in areas closer, if there's any water closer to the place. Now, once the soils are so fractured, it means that there's a lot of passages seeping through, or the liquids uphill or anywhere will be able to seep through the dam. So all this will have to be considered. And then if there are even water bodies around, let me say there are 2 water bodies. One may be a residue of a mining sector, a mining site. And then the one downstream might be a river, water for consumption. The fractures within the rock from uphill, downhill would give us a sense of idea, the extent to which the fluid uphill will travel to the down. So there will be tests done on all these waters to be able to, like the CSIR, to know few other things in terms of, now the land has been fractured, you understand? So any material liquid that would have taken, say, 5 years or 1 year to get to a certain location, now will take less a year to get to the location. So all these are the things that we have to, but the most important one is the seismic test that will be added and added information to the structural engineers for the construction and planning of the city as we move ahead.
Right. Let me come to Doc now. And before we get into the psychiatric, focal point with you, I'd just like to find out from you, from your observation, I'm sure you've watched the videos and followed this event. How did it strike you, having seen what happened in Apeatse? Let's start from there, Dr. Owusu-Antwi.
Thank you very much, and a very good morning. My sympathies goes out to the people in Apeatse.
Right.
And surrounding towns, their immediate families and all that. This is very devastating. I see this as traumatic enough, and I hope that the people in the town will get all the help that they need in all its dimensions, even in this difficult time.
Right. So let's look at the psychiatric dimension to all of this. Traumatic. We've heard of incidents where a child supposedly in a haze saw his mother. Next thing he knew, body parts flying, and that was it. There are people who have seen, who can't find family members. There are some children who can't even find their parents, who can't find family members. Highly traumatic. There are people who saw people die right before them. There is the instance of those who unfortunately were approaching the burning vehicle right before one of the explosions. All of this happened. I mean, some people would even have come from adjoining areas and seen the carnage that had happened. Psychologically, in terms of the psychiatric perspective, what would be happening to these people? What would be going on in their minds? Hello, Doc.
Yeah, thank you very much. I am so happy. Yes, hello.
Yes, please go ahead. I can hear you.
Hello, can you hear me? I'm so happy that Joy News is taking the lead in this direction. When emergencies like this happen, it causes a lot of devastation on people, even on individuals, on their family members, the society, even at a large. What usually happens is that people begin to feel a sense of anxiety. They begin to feel afraid. They live in despair. They begin to have sleep challenges. In fact, people begin to feel that they have lost their sense of protection in a society that was previously together, previously intact. The traditional authorities were in place, political authorities were in place, health structures were in place. Everything seems to have lost its grounds. And so people begin to feel afraid. They begin to feel that their sense of protection have been lost. And then again, this kind of emergency can potentially aggravate existing mental health challenges, or it can start or precipitate new mental health challenges. And I am sure that majority of the people in Apeatse now are going through very challenging issues and problems. When you look at research in other areas where such traumatic experiences have occurred, statistics is showing about 80 to 85% of the inhabitants of the township experiencing one form of mental health sequelae out of the sequelae from the emergency or from the traumatic experience. But then again, research has shown that if there is support enough, support gets to these people early enough, this high risk of mental health sequelae out of these mental health sequelae of these traumatic experiences are markedly reduced. And that is why the Psychiatric Association of Ghana want to take this challenge up, go to Apeatse, do an initial assessment and see how best we can intervene. That some weeks or some months or even some years to come, we don't have a whole township with high levels and high degrees of various mental health disorders.
Now, it's interesting that you've started painting this picture. In anticipation of this discussion, I actually took the time to look at, for example, years ago in 2011, some of the natural disasters or things that happened. You can talk about the Queensland floods in Australia, the Christchurch earthquake, the Japanese tsunami, and just try to follow the events, the mental health issues that some of those who survived or saw these incidents have had to share. And some of them, even till today, are suffering the after effects, mental health effects of those very serious, natural disasters that happened. That brings me to the question, Doc. What could be some of the psychological or psychiatric impact that an event like what we saw last week could have on some of these victims? Panic attacks and anxiety. Break it down for us, some of the things they likely would be experiencing.
Yes, you are absolutely right. What is immediately expected to happen is what we call acute stress reaction, which can further lead to acute stress disorder and then panic, post-traumatic stress disorder, and for a wide range of anxiety disorders. When traumatic events happen like this, in the immediate 24, 48, up to about 72 hours, you expect the people to naturally be scared, be anxious, be extremely afraid, and all that. And if people don't handle that fear well, they tip into what we call acute stress reaction. This acute reaction to the traumatic events that happens. And some people's reactions are overboard. And if within that 72 hours, their reaction to this traumatic event is not handled well, beyond the 72 hours to about 2 weeks after the incident, they can develop what we call acute stress disorder. Then the reaction now develops into a disorder where people are struggling with sleep, they are always on the edge, they are very irritable, they are extremely afraid, they are very paranoid, they don't know when next something bad is going to happen to them. There is a sense of impending doom all the time, and some of these symptoms will happen. And again, if at the level of the acute stress disorder, nothing is done to intervene, then these victims or these survivors and their immediate families are likely to suffer from what we call post-traumatic stress disorder. That is when they now relive the traumatic events daily in their life. They are having nightmares. Anytime there is a sound that sounds like the explosion, the whole picture begins to flow back into their mind. So we call a reliving of the experience, of the traumatic experience, years and months after it has happened, and they are always on the edge. They are very anxious, and these are some of the anxiety symptoms or the anxiety disorders that can happen. Beyond that, people can develop what we call obsessive compulsive disorder. People can develop somatization disorders. Somatization disorder is a big word, but what it means is that people begin to now experience bodily symptoms for no apparent medical reason. So you are having headaches, you are having burning sensation under your feet, there are tingling sensations all over your body, there is pain in the knee, pain here and there. You have done a battery of labs and you are medically fit, but these symptoms are persistent. So when these things happen, then the person is going through somatization disorder, and it's very common in men. And then again, people are likely to resort to substance misuse, because out of the anxiety, they resort to non-healthy means of coping or non-healthy coping mechanisms. Some people may resort to drinking away their worries, their fears, and eventually land into substance dependence, especially alcohol and sometimes smoking. And then lastly, there is
I know some people even could abuse painkillers as a result of some injuries and all of that.
Exactly. And even sleep medications, diazepam could even be abused, and people can develop dependence out of it. And then again, very worrying again is the high correlation of some of these traumatic experiences and occurrences and suicidality. Many people, especially the men, who think that their whole fortune has been ruined or have been shut down by this explosion, would decide that there's no worth living. All that they have lived for and fought for has been crushed in one explosion, would decide that it's not worth living again. And suicide is another risk that we should quickly look out for and intervene. And then lastly, people can also experience just sleep disorders, and they struggle to sleep, they struggle to fall asleep, or suddenly they are experiencing what we call early morning waking up. So someone who will usually wake up at 5 a.m. because of this traumatic experience, suddenly by 3 a.m. they are awake, and it continues, it persists. So these are some of the range of have been documented to have erased his life.
Right. Very quickly on this, Doc, right before I segue back to Engineer Mahama, very quickly on this one. Do you think our response in terms of, yes, we've seen food and other items taken to the people, but do you think our response in terms of dealing with the psychological, the mental health problems of these people has been slow? Do you think it's been slow? Because usually in other jurisdictions, you would see that immediately they would have had some assistance. For us, it has delayed up to this time. Have we been slow?
Exactly. It has. We have been extremely slow.
Please, could you start with your answer again? I think we missed.
Yes, I think we have been slow. But this is just about a week to the incident. And I think that Psychiatric Association of Ghana is coming in a bit early to address an otherwise extremely delay of that intervention. And so I think that we have been a bit slow, but this time around it has been relatively faster compared to other disasters that have happened. I remember the stadium disaster. I remember the circle floods and all that.
Right.
Some interventions, some psychiatric interventions were offered, but they did not come in early enough. But I think that this time around we are learning, and we have decided to step in sooner than previous occurrences.
Right. I'll come back to you with other questions, but let me bring in Engineer Mahama now. So how long do you estimate it will take before the landscape of Apeatse will be ready again for building, for habiting, if you like? And what must be done for the land to be habitable again? You've spoken about liquids that could have seeped into the soil. We saw that huge crater that was created by the explosion. The landscape has been torn apart. What must be done, really, to make the land habitable? And how long do you estimate it will take?
Yeah, I think the gang in this case, the number of groups that will be formed would give us the indication as to how long it will take. If you bring in one gang to do the work with few equipment, it will last longer. But if you bring about maybe a number of gangs, in this case, the gangs are the team, isolated teams who are doing the same work at the same time, grading the land, taking up all the debris, removing all the explosive materials, building debris on the side, the metal ones, the earth ones, what do you call the soil types, and then leveling the land. And in areas where we had a lot of loose material up, we'll grade the material and start doing layer by layer compactions to get the land a bit stable for the buildings to be started. So there will be a schedule. The leader of the team will give a schedule as to the equipment available, the resource persons available, or the experts available, i.e. the building engineers, the building contractors, the artisans that they are going to assemble, and then the plan, the master plan of the team, and whether they will have maybe, let's say, if you have about 6 gangs working at the same time for the construction, and they will all give their specified times as to what time they can get to a certain stage in the construction process and to the end. But before I forget, like Doc was saying, we seem to like the cameras when there's such devastations or such accidents. In 2015, on the 24th day of December, in fact, I had to carry injured bodies in my pickup to the Nsaon Government Hospital. You remember there was a similar explosion in Nsaon on the 24th day of December, which affected over 1,025 plus residents. About 217 buildings were affected, including the then MCE who was in power. And the next morning, the Interministerial Select Committee led by James Agaga came to the Nsawam area around the Piabo quarry site to more or less to sympathize with the people who have been affected. The next day, the current president, who was in opposition then, came to the site, came to solidarize with the people, and then expressed the unfortunate and how they're going to help to solve the problem. As we speak, 6 years or so down the line to the 7th year, the people are yet to receive compensation for an action that was taken by a quarry site which had been abandoned. And let me give you one scary thing about explosives. I have read all the laws, okay, but in the process, as we know it practically on the site, when you acquire explosives from outside the country from the manufacturer, it is given up to the minute, 1 minute tracking, even on shore, because they know that the least mistake would cause what we have seen at Apeatse now. So even from the manufacturer's end, on the ship to come and dock at the harbor, there's a tracker that is following every single movement of this explosive to the end user. And the Ministry of Interior would have up-to-date information as to the quantity coming to the country, where they are stored, and even the logs. The logs are not only kept by the supplier. So when we're doing the construction and we're doing this blasting along the Ayimensan stretch, the Peduasi area, and in Sound Bypass and the Kumasi Road, you'll have to go to the police in the morning, to the Armor Division. They will come along with you, inspect, open and inspect, and give you the quantity they are supposed to use for the blasting with an expert. And so, if things have gone on like this, and I'm giving you the one that I was present, my location was just about 2 kilometers away, and I was fast asleep. The first explosion got me standing akimbo, as if I was not sleeping. And because of my experience in the blasting, I told my colleagues that, see, we are far away, but let's start moving away from here. And the next 30 minutes, there was a second explosion. And the whole town, on the eve of Christmas, had to relocate that night to the town because of the information some of us volunteered to give to the people to move down further away from the community.
Wow.
7 years, more or less, as we speak. I'm telling you, 7 years as we speak, none of those people who are affected, the vehicles who were moving from Nsawan to Adeso, who were just unfortunate to be at the scene, when the explosion happened in two folds. None of them had been compensated.
Right.
The buildings that are there have not received any structural integrity. And out of frustration, these people have gone in again to continue their buildings because they don't have anybody to speak for them. I have seen that in Parliament, the MP for the area had been on his legs for some few times to actually remind authorities to address the issue. And I hope that this one should not suffer the same problem as the people of Nsawam, Piabo suffered in 2015, December 24, where I was actively involved in carrying wounded bodies in my pickup to the hospital to and fro. And so like the doctor is saying, psychological, sometimes when you see some of these things, then you lay back to see how you felt it at the time that it happened within your vicinity. And the authorities have to stop the talking. In fact, too much talking. This issue about the explosive being carried, I'm hoping to get, or we are hoping to receive an up-to-the-minute information about the investigation as to how these things were being transported. I'm telling you, as a consultant, we had difficulty assessing our explosive because the contractor is an international contractor, and he knew the processes involved in his homeland. Right. And so he even ensured that the same thing are done when we're even transporting this, explosive to our site. So government should open up, let this investigation be done thoroughly, and heads must roll. Because per the information we are getting as at this stage, we didn't see from the media videos whether they were conveying trucks, vehicles, pickups leading the chemicals as they were going to their destination. Because what I know is that before you move with such quantity of chemicals, which are highly dangerous, which are very, very dangerous because of the extent of explosion, sometimes a pickup with a danger sign on top of it, with about 4 or 5 experts in the pickup, would be warning off people ahead. Right. If there are any possible collusion or whatever. Right. And from the investigation so far, we didn't see anything like that.
So those are questions we ought to be asking as well.
Government should not hide this information from us. Okay. Because I'm saying that we are reliving what is happening in Sawam and other places, and there has not been any insight after 5 years, after 7 years.
Right. Engineer Mahama, hold briefly for me there. And your point has been made in this respect. But let me quickly, I'll come right back to you. But let me quickly put this to Dr. Apeatse. Now, it's interesting because in the course of the news review, someone sent a comment and I didn't have enough time to read it. Oting Hayford said, tell them to compensate the Awashipokwasi affected persons whose land government took. The case of compensation is 11 years now, and they aren't doing anything positive about it. A lot of the affected persons are going through hell. Where to sleep is a big problem for many of them. They should look through the letter on their table and pay them. I just want to synchronize what Engineer has been saying with this bit here, this message that was sent to us. We've been told about the restoration efforts in Apeatse, but between now and when that happens, should it actually happen, what would you say is the impact that is usually had on people who are displaced, like in this instance? We see here those who have not got their compensation, and if same happens in Apeatse in terms of relocation being slow or no compensation, what usually is the impact on people?
Yeah, so I talked about a wide range of mental health implications of emergencies and traumatic events like these, and some of them seem to be in a graded pattern, and from all over the world, the researches that have been done, statistics is proving that the amount and the extent of the support that these victims get is directly proportional to the extent of the short-term or long-term mental health challenges that they are likely to suffer. And so if, for instance, people are displaced and they are not getting any help, they are not getting any support to be now relocated and be given decent places anymore, what do you expect? These people are likely to say that life is not worth living. That is when suicide risk increases. That is when substance abuse increases. Many of these people are likely to resort to substance abuse, alcohol abuse, smoking, etc. And so in Ghana, we don't seem to have these data, these statistics to back some of these things. But now that there is a psychiatric association in place, we are going to do due diligence. We are going to follow up on these victims and their family. In fact, we plan to do series of visits. After today's visit, we are going to go back there to the town 2 weeks time, 1 month time, 6 months time, and even a year to actually collect data. And when you have evidence to prove to the government that, look, if this is not done, this is the amount of damage that is caused, maybe somebody will listen. And so we should not wait for it to happen. We can learn from what has happened elsewhere and bring in proper relocation, proper settlement for these people who have lost their homes and their sense of livelihood out of this. And so for the Psychiatric Association of Ghana, we don't want to just talk. We are going to Apeatse this morning. We're going to spend the whole day there with our entire membership, screen the people, do initial assessment, get a baseline and a sense of the mental health challenges they may be going through. We are carrying some anxiolytics with us. Anxiolytics are anti-anxiety medications for people who may need it. In fact, speaking to the district director there, they have already identified people who really need some mental health intervention, and they want us to meet with them. And so we hope that this intervention, which we think has been a bit earlier than previous instances, would reduce the occurrences of long-term mental health challenges. And as we are doing our bit, we call upon all bodies and entities also involved to do their bit in terms of settling and resettling these people as soon as possible.
Let me just ask you this, Doc, before I go back to engineer. This has got me reading a lot about other disasters that have happened in the past. You can cast your mind back to 2005, $125 billion of losses, 18,000 people affected. I'm talking about Hurricane Katrina. Ours is a smaller scale, much smaller scale. So far, 14 people who have lost their lives. But how long does it take for people to get past the mental health issues that arise from such situations? Here's the point I'm trying to make. It is said that time heals wounds, and over time, naturally, people let go of the hurt, the pain, the memories, and all of that. But we saw in the case of Hurricane Katrina, people in New Orleans actually, over time, only became more affected, mentally speaking. What are your expectations as far as the people of Apeatse are concerned? Would it be dependent on how proactive we are in dealing with their situation?
Certainly. How early interventions are given directly affect the outcome, the mental health outcome of people, of the people at Apeatse where the emergency occurred. Look at developed countries where they have even enough mental health aspects, where they even have all the expertise. People years after still suffered even severe mental health challenges. When you look at the trend, they actually reduce in intensity as time goes on, but some of them who probably did not seek help are likely to get severer form or develop severer form of mental health challenges. Notable among them is what we call post-traumatic stress disorder and other range of anxiety disorders. And so with our system, where we have few psychiatrists, just about 50 psychiatrists to over 30 million Ghanaians. How are we going to render this support? Now, the people who have died in this emergency are a few compared to other emergencies that have happened elsewhere in the world. But let us consider the extent of damage to those who are alive. Many homes have been lost. People have witnessed other people dying. And so those who are alive, if those who are dead and gone are dead and gone, there's not going to be any mental health intervention we are going to be able to do. But those who actually are alive and suffered various degrees and actually witnessed the trauma are a lot in this case. And from my last check, there are more than 70 people getting to 100 people. And so these are the people we are going to focus on to make sure that if we are giving early intervention, then with time, the severe mental health challenges that could have otherwise arisen without this intervention would be low or will be less severe. And no matter what we do, some will still live with those challenges, but hey, we are still here to give the support even throughout the difficult period. But once intervention goes in earlier, and intervention is not just one directional, it should be a multiple approach. People, like I said, when we are giving the mental health intervention, the government is also coming in with risk settlement. The district health directorate is also coming in with the help that the people need. Those who have wounds, those who have had cuts, etc., are all being given intervention. So it's a multi approach that we should all look at all of this kind of emergency. And when we're able to do that, we are likely to averse long-standing or long-term mental health sequelae out of this. And that is what we are hoping to achieve.
Right. I'll give you a minute each to wrap. I'll start with you, Dr. Owusu. So if the right things are not done in less than a minute, if you can, what would be the likely effect? Right before I wrap with Engineer. What would be the likely effect on the community, on our health systems, on the country as a whole?
We are likely to get an increased numbers in mental health challenges. We are likely to have a whole community full of alcoholics. We are likely to have an increased rate of suicide. We are likely to have a non-functional community full of people who are living with anxiety disorders. We don't want that to happen. We will not be able to do that alone as the Psychiatric Association of Ghana, and we want the government to support us. We are going in this time around with our own support. I mean, the little dues we take as an association is what we are using to purchase anxiolytics, is what we are using to fuel our vehicle to the place, is what we are using to go to the place and intervene. On a larger scale, we would need to attend to everybody there. And if we will get enough support, we'll be able to avert the situation.
Just to clarify, so you're not getting any support from any institution or government. This is purely the Ghana Psychiatric Association embarking on this initiative. You're not getting support from government or anywhere.
Yes. So for this initial initiative, the Psychiatric Association of Ghana is bearing the entire cost. We are having non-monetary support from our GMA, Ghana Medical Association, who helped us to contact the various authorities in the township, linked us to the health authorities there, the traditional bodies and all that. But in terms of monetary support, what fuel we are using to go there are the medications we are sending. We are not receiving any payment for this. This is entirely the effort of the Psychiatric Association of Ghana. But we can only do so little. I mean, we as we go there today, we will appreciate the extent of the problem, and we are hoping that as we share aftermaths of our visits and we see the magnitude of the problem, other bodies will come in and support us. The government will come in and support us so that we can return and render a wider extent of support and intervention to the people.
Thank you, Doc. Just stay with us as we wind down. Engineer Mahama, so for your wrap-up comments, I would like you to tell us, so what would be your expectations? Imagine you were managing this project. What would be your expectations in the next few days, this week, this month? What would you want to see within this time period in terms of rehabilitating Apeatse?
Well, I would want to see that government has allocated a place for those who are temporarily displaced. It's quite a good place for them to actually stay for now. And they want to see how serious the mining sectors or those companies within the area are willing to help. Like I've heard that some of the mining companies are already giving $50,000 in equivalent as in materials and other things. So the Ghana, the Ministry of Local Government, and as well as the the Ministry of the Lands and Natural Resource, as well as that of the construction, should come in quickly and let's get an independent leaders in the built environment. The Ghana Institute of Engineers can be contacted to take the lead in quickly redesigning some of these buildings for the people within the community. And then after this are done, I'm sure that because they're not going to be high-rise buildings, I expect that in the next 1 month or two, if government is really committed, some of the buildings may be at the completion stage so that we can quickly bring these people back to their community where they so cherish. Otherwise, the longer they stay away from the community,
right,
the higher the cost. But quickly to touch on the compensation issue, the Pokwase area. These are done during the construction of roads and buildings, especially roads. And my only advice is that the authorities who are in charge, as the Lands Commission, they need to have, see, when we do the compensation for the initial people to move from their location where the roads are going to be passing, they give them some advance money to go and either put up a new building or rent a place. But government will not have to do the actual assessment of the cost of the lands and the buildings prior to final payment. That's the only place that I think a delay.
Right.
So the people who are the valuation board and then the lands commission should up their game, because sometimes you finish a road construction and it takes 5 years, 10 years, people are yet to receive their monies. And the value of the lands keep on increasing. So that's my advice to the institutions who are in charge of this compensation. It cuts across almost all areas where roads are constructed, and compensation should come up in due course.
Engineer Mahama, thank you so much for joining the conversation. Dr. Ruth Owusu-Antwi, thank you so much as well for joining the conversation. Engineer Abdullahi Mahama is a building consultant, and Dr. Ruth Owusu-Antwi is president of the Ghana Psychiatric Association. We have a lot coming your way. We'll be talking about the New Year school event, but also UTAG and the Accra situation where one life has been lost. Do stay. We'll be right back.